Colorado's elected leaders spin their roles in the government shutdown with hilarious results. A next viewer wonders if the law is treating marijuana as more dangerous than guns. We've resorted to playing with children's toys to explain a make-or-break decision for the train to the plane. A year after he first came on Next, he still doesn't know what happened to his family. And if you've had a bad day, Mackenzie's back to fix that. Remember her? She's the one who didn't just want to beat cancer. She wanted to do it in record time. Next. Thank goodness the government shutdown is over. Now Colorado's congressional delegation can get back to the important work of spinning their record on the government shutdown. Top prize goes to Democratic Senator Michael Bennet, who is about to explain to us humble voters why his vote for the shutdown wasn't really a vote for the shutdown.
Well, I don't think of it as voting for the shutdown, but if you're asking do I regret my vote, no, because at least it resulted in some progress, however modest it is.
Senator Bennet can't win here because Republicans are going to attack his vote for the shutdown, and then liberals are already going after him for voting to lift the shutdown once the whole thing blew up on Democrats. All the Dems got out of the deal was this vague pledge by the GOP to bring up a vote on preventing the deportation of DACA recipients. So we asked Senator Bennet today, if this whole deal goes south, is that on the Republicans or it is on him for taking their word?
I will be really disappointed if McConnell doesn't put a vote on the floor, because that is what he promised. He did not promise for that to pass, which means we have a lot of work to do to be able to make sure that we get that passed.
So Bennett's in a tough spot because he voted for the shutdown, then he voted to give it up. Democratic Congresswoman Diane DeGette, Denver, she was consistent. She voted for the shutdown both times. She said that's because she opposes kicking the can down the road with another short-term spending plan. Problem is, the road is lined with cans kicked by Congresswoman DeGette. We checked the last decade of voting records, and DeGette has voted for dozens of these short-term spending bills, these continuing resolutions. She only seems to have developed a problem with them once President Trump took office. She's voted against them 4 times during the Trump administration. Her spokeswoman told us today that about a year ago, DeGette decided that short-term funding bills were too disruptive. Republican Congressman Ken Buck used to vote against a ton of these short-term spending bills. And then President Obama left office. Now he's a fan of the can kicking. We've said it here before, we'll say it again. If you don't think this is a game, it's because you haven't been watching the scoreboard. Speaking of games, the loudest cheerleader in Colorado on President Trump's election night was Cynthia Kaufman, which was kind of a shock. Not shocking, according to politics guy Brandon Ritteman, is that now Democrats want to tie Kaufman to Trump at every turn as she runs for governor.
The night Donald Trump shocked the world, Cynthia Kaufman, who'd been considered a moderate Republican by most, delivered a shock of her own.
Go Trump!
Democrats are betting this moment comes back to haunt her during the run for governor. After all, Colorado voted for Hillary Clinton. But Kaufman herself begged to differ, speaking at a Republican breakfast recently.
I'm proud of it. I was excited on election night that the Republican team was winning and that we were going to take back the presidency. But I own it now. We own it. We can't hide from the President of the United States. He's our party.
Some pretty candid remarks recorded by a Democratic group, but Kaufman happily stood by all this when we got her on the phone.
My team won. So yes, I was excited about that. I embrace having a Republican president, whether I agree with everything that comes out of this president's Twitter account or not.
She repeated something else she told the group, that Democrats want to make the governor's race all about President Trump, which they do. The reality is, though, Republican candidates can't win their primary in Colorado without Trump voters. What they'll have to own in the process is largely up to the president himself. For Next, I'm Brandon Ritteman.
Our next question comes from a viewer named Roxanne. Her husband manages a marijuana dispensary. She writes, they have to take every piece of marijuana and put it in the safe every night, just in case someone breaks in and steals it. There was another break-in at a gun store recently. Why aren't the gun stores required to take every piece of material and put it in a safe every night, in case someone breaks in and tries to steal it? A fair question, Roxanne. So we did some digging on this, and we found that your husband's dispensary must have some kind of company rule about securing the marijuana at night, because that is not a state or a federal regulation. There are state-specific security rules, locks, alarms, 24-hour security video for dispensaries, but nothing about locking up the weed. Feds control gun store security. The ATF says it can make recommendations about how to secure firearms when stores are closed, but it is up to each company to determine how they secure their stock. All right, so stop me if you've heard this one before. RTD is asking state regulators for permission to get rid of all the crossing guards and the delays for the train to the plane. The latest in their long string of pleas for A-line leniency is so simple a child could understand. And that explains how Marshall Zellinger spent his day.
Instead of showing you video of the A-line and crossing guards and gates and signals and an alphabet soup of regulators, I'm going to simplify RTD's newest argument to get rid of crossing guards in a language we can all understand. Choo-choo! RTD is once again trying to convince state regulators, the PUC, that the train crossings are safe without crossing guards. The PUC has approved a specific number of seconds that the gates should be down at each crossing of the A-line. And each crossing is different. For example, at Steel Street, it's 30 seconds. At Sable, it's 36 seconds. RTD admits it will never be that number every time, and they want the PUC to stop expecting it. For example, if the rail system detects the train speeding, the train will slow down, causing the gates to stay down longer. If the train slows because someone or something is on the tracks, the gates will stay down longer. If one train operator drives slower than another, the gates will stay down longer. Federal regulators have already said it's okay if the gates stay down as much as 20 seconds longer than expected. RTD wants the state to say okay as well. So much so that RTD's chief said this in a recent testimony for the state regulators to consider. Quote, "I cannot justify the expense of millions of additional dollars to try some other approach to grade crossing systems, whether it's a new system or the continued use of crossing attendants. I see no real benefit, only significant, unnecessary, and potentially project-crippling costs." There will be a hearing on this either next month or in March, and that's when we get to say RTD, PUC, and FRA all over again. The state needs to determine if it expects a specific time every time a train goes through a crossing, or if RTD has proven it's as safe as a kid's train set. Kyle?
I understand it now. I do, which I think was your goal. And every time I feel bad that we're working out of this temporary newsroom set for a week, I'm just going to remember you're having to work out of the lunchroom. So it could be worse. It could be worse. Marshall, thank you. Hey, how about them cookies? 5 Girl Scouts, one step away from creating a new law in Aurora. They want drivers there cited if they smoke in the car with minors present. Their proposal got a few tweaks at last night's city council meeting. As we've been explaining since we first met these Girl Scouts, just like Colorado's seatbelt law, this smoking thing would be a secondary violation. You'd have to be pulled over for speeding or something else first to be cited. And instead of a fine, a judge could sentence the smoker to community service instead. We'll tell you about the city council final vote in 2 weeks. Syria has largely fallen out of the news. Abid Kaifo is hungry for every word of what is happening that trickles back to Denver. His parents were born in Syria. A lot of his family still lives there. Family he can't get in touch with. This week we checked back in with him a year after he first came on our program.
A year ago, I was in a really difficult time. I was really trying to figure out how I can help the people of Aleppo, which is where my family is originally from, get out of the circumstances that they were in, and it was dire. My family is in Aleppo, and they're in those neighborhoods where it was besieged. And so I did not know whether they were outside or they were inside or they were surrounded or they were not. And so a fear was that my family may be trapped in there. And I was concerned that I may lose them. You know, I may lose my family. Now, I still don't know what happened to my family in Aleppo. I am hoping to God that they're okay. I've tried everything. You know, with all the chaos that's been happening, you know, I think, God, I don't know. I mean, I wish I could tell you that it's 50-50, you know, it's just one or the other. But the likelihood that they've passed is probably a good 80%, 85%. That they've gone on. They've been killed. I've been searching for 5 years. Cannot find them. Don't know if they're dead or alive. Don't know if they're safe. Don't know if they're buried. I just want to know how they are. If they're safe, great. If not, God help us.
Obaid is still searching for more than a dozen members of his family. These days he's doing that through word of mouth and social media. His family would like to return to Syria someday when they feel that it's safe.
After an episode of winter, we return you to your regularly scheduled drought. Mid-60s by Thursday. Denver's trees are dying. They're old. Would you plant a new one if you got it for free? And a big announcement from a Coloradan who sparked a revolution. If you can guess which one, drink.
The most Colorado thing we saw today is your chance at a free tree. Can you dig it? Time's running out to get on the list for a free or low-cost tree if you live within the city of Denver. February 15th is the date, and we're told that the most popular varieties of free trees are already selling out. Now, you know that the emerald ash borer is chewing its way through Colorado, looking to make lunch of Denver's more than 300,000 ash trees. And that will leave us feeling a bit denuded, but real estate development is also taking down a lot of trees that we should be replacing. Plus, some of Denver's beautiful old trees are just that, old.
Denver is certainly losing thousands of trees each year. Many of the trees were planted over 100 years ago, so they've reached their maximum maturity and are starting to decline, and that's just going to increase over the coming years, so it's great to get proactive and start planting now.
As of now, this effort that they call Denver Digs Trees is still just for Denver. Its organizers told us today they eventually would like to expand this effort to the suburbs. Details on signing up are in this article on 9news.com.
Sunshine today, but still cool enough that a lot of snow cover still in place on the ground. It's all going to change tomorrow. I'm meteorologist Kathy Sabin. While it's currently 23 at DIA, it's almost 40 in downtown Denver after highs in the mid-40s in the city and mid-30s out east. The only advisories to show you are wind advisories in southeastern Wyoming ahead of a winter weather storm that's really going to produce more snow for the northern mountains and the Front Range. In between now and Friday, when the storm arrives, southwest winds will push temperatures above average. Very little in the way of moisture or cloud cover, so we'll push into the mid-50s tomorrow, low 60s on Thursday, the warmest day of the week, and then bring in some mountain snow on Thursday night. Fair skies and 18 tonight. Tomorrow, temperatures in the mid-50s. A beautiful day shaping up, and I really do think that Thursday will be quite warm with highs way above average ahead of that mountain storm on Friday. A nice weekend warm up, sunshine mid-40s Saturday, mid-50s on Sunday, and just about everybody enjoying all of the snow from the Sunday storm. And yes, there is more on the way.
A Colorado native trades a career in banking for baseball. Good call. A nonprofit celebrating 50 years through the eyes of an employee couple celebrating the same. And we check in with the Coloradan who got accidentally internet famous while she was in chemo. Next.
When I grow up, I want to be like Charlie Papazian. He isn't a newsman, he's a beer guy. And today, the founder of the Brewers Association in Boulder announced that he is going to retire in 1 year's time on his 70th birthday. After 4 decades of building the craft beer movement from something done by a few bearded guys in flannel to something done by a ton of bearded guys in flannel, and some awesome women as well. Papazian literally wrote the book on homebrewing. His motto spoke to me. Relax, don't worry, have a homebrew. It wasn't a guarantee of success, but rather an invitation to realize that if you spent the day brewing, for work or for fun, it wasn't a bad day. Raise a glass to Charlie Papazian. The Colorado Rockies don't have a single player in the Baseball Hall of Fame, so for the time being, we will have to settle for and celebrate the newest member of Major League Baseball's Groundskeeper Hall of Fame. Steve Reitman graduated from UNC in Greeley. His first career was in banking, but you don't get to watch baseball for free as a banker. So he joined Denver Parks and Rec as the manager of ball field maintenance in 1973. A few years later, he became the head groundskeeper at Mile High Stadiums. That was for the Broncos and the Denver Bears. He went on to work in San Diego for the Padres and Chargers. Steve, congratulations on your induction into the Hall of Fame. ARC thrift stores turn 50 this year. 50 years is a long time. Just ask Angelita and Marcos.
I'm very happy where I am now.
Angelita Reyes is in the business of picking people. She's worked in HR for ARC for 14 years.
I'm always happy to be here. This is like my family.
She picked her husband Marcos in 1968, the same year ARC got its start in Denver. She was working here when he retired, restlessly retired.
He said, you know, I'm so bored. I don't know what to do. He said, why don't you help me get a job at ARC?
Good thing he knew someone on the inside. Marcos just had to pass the background check performed by his wife.
It's a good thing that I did not see anything that I don't know. There's nothing there.
We need assistance at the glass cases, please.
Marcos works at the original ARC on Broadway, alongside the co-workers who have become the most recognizable faces of the nonprofit, which has helped people with disabilities for half a century.
I like the people here. They are fantastic.
Marcos spent his first career as an engineer. Here, he has found acceptance in his second act.
They know how to treat a person like me who limp around.
Marcos understands customer service, as a married man of 50 years must.
Yeah, how did you do it for 50 years so far, Marcos?
Whatever Lola wants, Lola gets.
He's not kidding.
When she's holding 2 clothes, and she said, which one do I buy? I said, buy them both.
And that is why the woman who picks people picked him twice. To last for 50 years, you know Marcos and ARC have got to be doing something right.
If I have to do it all over again, I'll end up with the same girl.
The final hoop for Mackenzie to jump through was chemo. Luckily for her, she specializes in hoops. The woman who went viral for hooping in the hospital updates us on her health and your feedback. Remember our friend Mackenzie Coomer? She got all internet famous after she live streamed her dancing with a hula hoop in her hospital room at UC Health. Even the nurse behind her is like, hey, what's going on here? She's a student at CU Boulder. She's actually studying pre-med when she was diagnosed with cancer late last year. She told us how she had danced her way through chemo and a stem cell transplant. Today, some good news from Mackenzie. She was released from the hospital after one final dance, of course. Assuming that she does not have a relapse, her treatment protocol is almost over. Ring the bell and go home, as they do. She started taking her online classes this week. She is going to graduate next December, and then it is on to medical school. Something tells me she won't have any problem getting in there. A lot of folks want to talk politics tonight. Melissa Gutierrez writing in about us saying, if you think this isn't a game, then you haven't been looking at the scoreboard. She says this is why it's one of the few things I watch on TV. Sandman says, appreciate the honesty of news reporting regardless of bias. As we have talked about here often, every single human being has bias. You want to get your news from somebody who acknowledges that fact and promises you every day that they're going to work hard to counteract their own bias. And Eric says, are you redecorating again? You mean this? Temporary situation while I tweak some things in studio. I assume it's racing stripes and flames. It's going to be awesome. See you next time.